Burris, and this is Akram's Ideas, bringing creative and crazy ideas to life. Today's episode is all about cupcakes, as you can see from my very cupcake skirt from @ModCloth to my cupcake accessories, including this cute little brooch that I will be showing you how to make later on this month. But today's episode is about these delicious Raspberry Red Velvet Cupcakes, topped with a cream cheese filling and these cute little candy melt hearts. Before we get started with our recipe, let's talk a little bit about the history of red velvet cake. It was actually a recipe created by the Waldorf Hotel in New York back in the day. The actual redness from the cake was made from a mixture of the acidic ingredients with the cocoa powder. Now, it wasn't a true red cake, but it did have a deeper tint than normal chocolate cakes, which gave it sort of a reddish appearance. Now, it wasn't until during the Great Depression that the Adams Extract Company was needing a way to market their newly developed red food coloring that they used the red velvet cake recipe and added red food coloring to it. With their successful marketing campaign, red velvet cake soon became a staple in many households across the country. It also was known for its bright red color. And while the recipe originated in New York, it's traditionally considered a Southern dessert. Now, while you can make red velvet cake with food coloring, it's typically a lot of artificial flavoring. So for our recipe today, we're actually going to replace the red food dye with raspberries. Now, you won't get that neon red color, but you will get a nice rich colored chocolate cake and a decadent raspberry flavor throughout the cupcake. So that's what we have in store for you today. Let's get started. I've got the ingredients set out here and I've got them divided up. I've got my dry ingredients in this large bowl. I've got my creamed ingredients, and then I have our acids. And let's just go through each of the ingredients. In the dry ingredients, we have 2 1/4 cups of flour, a 1/2 cup of natural cocoa, and again, you don't want to use the Dutch processed cocoa because it will not have the same reaction with the acids as natural cocoa. Personally, I like using Hershey's natural cocoa, but any all-natural cocoa will do. Then we have 1 teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and 1 teaspoon of cream of tartar. And I've sifted this all together. You want to sift all your dry ingredients, and just a tip in baking in general, if anytime you have dry ingredients, I would always sift them. It makes it easier to blend in. It makes your batter a little bit smoother. Even when just making a store-bought cake mix, if you sift the cake mix first, I find that it's just a nicer batter, no clumps or anything, and it mixes much better. So that is our dry ingredients. So now let's talk about our cream ingredients. We've got a cup of butter. We've got 2 1/2 cups of white sugar, and you could use a sugar alternative. I've made these with Splenda before, but in this case I'm going to be using regular sugar. And then we have 4 eggs, and then we have a tablespoon of vanilla, which we'll be adding once we get creamy. Now, as mentioned earlier, the acids mixing with the cocoa is what actually gives a natural red tint to the cake. And for our acids, we have a 1/2 cup of buttermilk, a 1/2 cup of plain white yogurt, For this recipe, I actually chose to use Greek yogurt because that is the yogurt of choice that I purchase all the time. So you could use regular yogurt or Greek yogurt as I did. Then I have 2 tablespoons of white vinegar and 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. Now you can use bottled lemon juice, but I've chosen to use a freshly squeezed lemon. I find that anytime you can add fresh ingredients to a recipe, the flavor is enhanced so much more. So I like using the fresh squeezed lemon. Now, while you can make natural red velvet cake in a variety of ways, such as with the use of beets, however, I didn't think the idea of having beets in my cake would be so good. So, as the name implies, we will be using raspberries. And here I've got 1.5 cups of raspberry puree. And the recipe for this puree is on Akram's Ideas blog. You can look that up. You could also purchase raspberry puree already made, but again, like the lemon juice, if you can make it fresh, then it's going to have a much more enhanced flavor and it's going to taste better. Now, the raspberries have a nice mix with the chocolate. You'll often see recipes that have raspberries and chocolate paired together. However, I found that there is a distinct raspberry flavor to this cake. So instead of just straight red velvet cake, I am calling it a raspberry red velvet cake because you will taste the raspberries. So now we're going to get started putting all this together. So I'm going to start with our creamed ingredients. I'm going to take our butter and put it here in my mixer. And it always helps to have a stand mixer. And I'm going to blend the batter up, and I'm going to start adding the sugar to that. So now we'll go ahead and add the sugar to this mixture. You do want to start out on a slow speed, or else any of the dry granules will fly up at you. And I've had many explosions in that regard, so you do want to start off slow. And you want to scoop the sides of your bowl, making sure that it's all getting mixed in. You might even want to unclog your whisk attachment here. Now we want to add our eggs, and we want to add 1 egg at a time. So I'm using my little spatula here to just grab 1 egg and catch any spills. We're going to do our second egg. We'll move on to the third egg. And then finally, we're going to add our 4th and final egg to the mixture. Again, you're going to want to scoop the sides of the bowl. Make sure that it's all being blended together. And at this point, I'm going to add our tablespoon of vanilla. Go. that that is well whipped. So now we'll get started mixing our acidic ingredients together before we start blending the whole cake. So I'm going to take my buttermilk, and I've got another mixing bowl here. I'm going to pour that into it. I'm going to use my spatula to make sure that I've gotten all of that into this bowl here. Then I'm going to that add my Greek yogurt, my half cup of buttermilk and a half cup of Greek yogurt. Again, you want to make sure that you're getting all that together. And then 2 tablespoons of white vinegar, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, and then I'm going to take a whisk and I'm just going to gently beat that together. And then we're actually going to mix this in with our raspberry mixture. Do this a little bit at a time. There you go. And you can see that color starting to come in. And again, you want to make sure that this is well blended. Now I've got my creamed ingredients, I've got my acidics mixed together, and I've got my dry ingredients. And so now it's time to get the cake batter all together. I've switched out from my whisk attachment to this paddle attachment just because we're no longer kind of creaming things, we're doing more of a mixture. And we're basically going to break this up into segments. I'll add a little bit of the dry ingredients, and then I'll add a little bit of the acidic ingredients. So I'm just going to grab a couple of measuring scoops, and we're going to scoop these in just a little at a time. So I'm going to actually start with my dry ingredients, and again, these have been all sifted together freehand. So I'm taking about a half a cup or so and dumping that into my creamed ingredients here. So there was some of our dry ingredients, and now I'm going to take some of the acidics and slowly drop that into here as well. And you just keep repeating this process, adding a little bit of the dry and then adding a little bit of the acids until it's all mixed together. Now that we have our mixture all mixed together, we're going to go ahead and remove it from the mixer here. Put all the batter off of your little paddle so you don't waste any of that batter. And then you should, at the beginning of this, have your oven preheated to 350 degrees. And I have here a 12 cupcake pan, or muffin tin, I guess you could say. And I just got little cupcake liners for each one. And you're going to bake these for about 18 to 20 minutes each. You're really going to check with a toothpick to their doneness. Every oven is different, just the way they set, to their heating element, so I do encourage you to check these. So to scoop these into your cupcake mixer, I'm going to use a scooper, which is one of celebrity chefs Alton Brown's favorite little gadgets. So I'm going to use this little scooper here to scoop into these cupcake containers. Now, depending on the size of cupcakes that you're aiming for, you might want to do 1 to 2 scoops in each one. Now, do remember that they are going to rise. I think I'm going to do about 2 scoops in each one of these little containers here. And then you're just going to go ahead and fill up the entire tray of cupcakes. The batter, the recipe itself actually makes about 24 to 25 cupcakes depending on the size and the size of your cupcakes. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get these inside the cupcake liners, and then I'm going to go ahead and bake it, checking it on and off for that time period to see when they're fully baked. And once they're baked, we're going to come back here and I'll show you how to frost them. You're watching Akram's Ideas, bringing creative and crazy ideas to life. Now that our cupcakes have been baked and are in the refrigerator cooling, it's time to make the frosting. Now, red velvet cake traditionally has a cream cheese frosting, which is exactly what we're going to be making here. Our ingredients include 4 ounces or a stick of butter, 4 ounces of cream cheese, which is half a block of an 8-ounce cream cheese block, 2 cups of powdered sugar, and of course a teaspoon of vanilla. We're gonna blend this all together and make our frosting. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our butter and we're going to go ahead and put that in our mixer. And we're also going to go ahead and add the cream cheese at this time. We're going to go ahead and whip these two together in the mixer. Again, you want to kind of start out slow, so not to make any splatters, and also because it is going to be a little difficult right at the beginning before they start to cream together. So now we're going to slowly add some of our powdered sugar into that mixture. And powdered sugar is notorious for causing explosions all over the place if you put your mixer on high, so you will want to go pretty slow. As you work in the powdered sugar, it is going to thicken the frosting, so you'll want to keep scraping down the edges as you go along. I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of my powdered sugar. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and add our teaspoon of vanilla. Now that our cream cheese frosting has been mixed together and it's all well blended, I've put it in a frosting bag. This is just one of those disposable plastic frosting bags that you can get at the store. And I'm actually going to be using Wilton tip, frosting tip number 12. It's just a large round circle. This is going to give us a nice tight round topping for our cupcakes. Now, I have our 12 cupcakes here that we're going to be frosting, and you'll notice that they've sunken down a little bit. Whenever you add fruit to a cake mix, it will become a little flatter than a normal cake would. Also, it depends on the amount that you put in your cups. Some of these cups got slightly more batter than the others, trying to finish off the whole mix and not waste any. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the frosting bag, and I like to wrap the bag around my finger here so I can get a little bit more pressure application to the frosting bag. And I'm going to just press and create sort of this spiral going all the way around. Ta-da! And I'm going to just repeat this process. The more you press, the more prevalent the frosting will be. And of course, you can decorate these with sprinkles or whatnot. I actually have made some candied hearts, basically just taking some candy melts and a frosting tip bag and tracing out a template of hearts. I'll actually have later on this month a tutorial on how to make some candy melt toppings. It is very close to Valentine's Day, and these make a wonderful treat. So that's about the gist of it. There you have our Raspberry Red Velvet Cupcakes topped with a cream cheese frosting and a lovely little candy melt heart. I hope you will try this recipe at home, and if you have any suggestions or recommendations for the recipe, what did you like, what didn't you like, please let me know in the comments below or on Akram's Ideas. I hope to have many more creative and crazy ideas for you throughout the month, and as well as in the future. Now that we have our cupcakes done, all that's left to do is try one out. Gonna go for this one here. Pull back the frosting or the cup here to get to the cupcake. This is truly delicious. You're watching Akram's Ideas, bringing creative and crazy ideas to life.